It's 6 p.m. on Thursday here in Korea. Thanks for tuning in. I'm Hwang Ji-hye. And these are the top stories we're following at this hour. As South Korea celebrates Armed Forces Day, President Park Geun-hye urges North Korea to give up its nuclear ambitions and come back to the negotiating table. The foreign ministers of South Korea and Japan meet on the sidelines of the UN General Assembly and sort out issues for an upcoming trilateral summit with China. And the United States and Russia agreed to hold military talks on Syria after Moscow launched airstrikes in the war-torn country, saying it's targeting Islamic State militants. Washington, however, worries that the strikes are aimed at opponents of Syria's leader. Today is Armed Forces Day here in Korea, a day to pay tribute to all past and present service members for their dedication and sacrifice. President Park Geun-hye attended the ceremony and sent a strong message to North Korea. Kim Hyun-bin brings us this report.
The Army, Navy, and Air Force celebrated their 67th anniversary on Thursday at a ceremony at the Armed Forces headquarters in Gyeryongdae, Chungcheongnam-do Province. Over 700 high-ranking government and military officials took part in the ceremony, including President Park Geun-hye and Defense Minister Han Min-gu. President Park used the occasion to thank the members of the military for their service. She also sent a strong message to North Korea.
북한은 우리 민족의 운명을 위태롭게 만들고 세계 평화의 걸림돌이 되고 있는 핵 개발과 장거리 탄도 미사일 개발을 즉시 중단해야 합니다. 북한이 핵을 고집하는 한 고립은 깊어질 뿐이며 경제 발전의 길도 결코 열릴 수 없습니다.
The president also emphasized the potential rewards for the North if it engages in dialogue with South Korea and the international community.
북한이 대결이 아닌 대화의 장으로 나온다면 대한민국과 국제사회는 북한의 경제 재건을 적극 도울 것입니다. 북한은 핵을 포기하고 우리와 국제사회가 내미는 협력의 손길을 잡기 바랍니다.
President Park's speech comes ahead of the 70th anniversary of the founding of the North's ruling Workers' Party, slated for October 10th. Many experts believe North Korea will conduct a provocation of some sort around the anniversary, possibly a fourth nuclear test or an intercontinental ballistic missile launch. Kim Hyun-bin, Arirang News, Gyeryongdae.
And Korea's political parties also marked the day by thanking service members for their dedication to maintaining peace on the Korean peninsula. Kim Young-gil has more.
The ruling Saenuri Party promised to build a strong army in order to maintain peace and stability in Korea.
Our party applauds the 67th anniversary of Armed Forces Day. We will do our best to support efforts to strengthen the military and build a force worthy of the people's absolute trust.
Floor Leader Won went on to note that Korea's military power has grown to the point that the country now produces and exports its own combat equipment, even though it didn't have a single tank when the armed forces were created in 1948. The main opposition New Politics Alliance for Democracy said the reason why the Korean people are able to live such ordinary lives is thanks to the soldiers who guard the country's borders.
We were able to rest in peace during the Chuseok holiday thanks to our armed forces. Our party will make an effort to build a virtuous and happy society by honoring the spirits of our patriotic martyrs and respecting our troops.
Floor Leader Lee said the opposition will work to root out corruption in the defense industry, as corruption is a barrier to strengthening the nation's defenses. He also expressed his hope for a speedy recovery for the 2 South Korean soldiers who were wounded by a landmine explosion in August that was blamed on North Korea. Kim Young-gil, Arirang News.
The top diplomats of South Korea and Japan have laid the groundwork for the upcoming summit between their countries and China. Japan is eager to hold a bilateral summit with Korea on the sidelines of that meeting, but Seoul says its focus is on making the three-way summit a success. Song Ji-sun reports.
South Korea's Foreign Minister Yoon Byung-se sat down with his Japanese counterpart Fumio Kishida in New York on Wednesday local time. The two countries are preparing for a trilateral summit with China, that is set for later this month or early next month in Seoul. It is expected that the three leaders will seek enhanced cooperation on pursuing peace on the Korean Peninsula and prosperity in Northeast Asia. However, there is no word yet on whether President Park Geun-hye will hold their first one-on-one summit talks with Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe on the sidelines of the three-way summit.
We are currently focused on making the trilateral summit a success. As for a bilateral summit between Korea and Japan, we will hold working-level talks at the Director General level as the next step.
Korea and Japan last held summit talks in 2012, but relations have soured badly over the past 3 years due to Japan's territorial claims to Korea's Dokdo Island and Tokyo's refusal to resolve issues related to its sexual enslavement of Korean women before and during World War II. The latter is a particularly emotive issue for Koreans, especially as the number of surviving registered victims is now below 50. Following the meeting, Minister Yoon reiterated the importance of resolving the sex slavery issue at an early date in order to improve the relations between the two countries and for summit talks to take place. 송지선, Arirang News.
The United States has imposed sanctions on 2 North Korean companies for engaging in nuclear and missile technology proliferation activity. The U.S. Federal Register said last Thursday that the companies are the Korea Mining and Development Corporation and Haesung Trading Corporation and their affiliates. The sanctions, which will be in effect for 2 years, ban trade, including all U.S. government contracts with both companies. It's the second such action by the U.S. in just a month after it slapped sanctions on North Korea arms development and trading companies in September. Russia has launched its first airstrikes in war-torn Syria. Moscow says its jets are bombing targets controlled by the so-called Islamic State. The United States, however, has condemned Russia and accuses President Putin of having ulterior motives. The two sides will hold emergency military-to-military talks. Son Jung-in reports.
Russia's defense ministry says its air force carried out around 20 missions targeting Islamic State militants in Syria on Wednesday and destroyed 8 positions belonging to the extremists, including a command center. The airstrikes included areas in central Homs and Hama provinces. However, the United States expressed doubts Moscow targeted IS-held territories as claimed. Washington believes the strikes were instead directed against opposition rebels threatening Syria's leader Bashar al-Assad. Syria's main Western-backed opposition group says one airstrike killed 36 civilians, including 5 children, in Homs. Moscow denies civilians were killed. The warplanes started their mission shortly after the Russian parliament unanimously voted to allow Vladimir Putin to use the air force to target militants. The U.S. and Russia are planning to hold military talks to ensure they do not come into accidental conflict during their respective air campaigns in Syria. Holding a press conference with Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov at UN headquarters in New York, U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry said talks could take place as early as Thursday.
So, as Sergei said to you, we agreed on the imperative of as soon as possible, perhaps even as soon as tomorrow, but as soon as possible, having a military-to-military deconfliction discussion.
The latest development has intensified debates on strategies to defeat violent extremists in the region. U.S. President Barack Obama and his Russian counterpart clashed over how to resolve the Syrian crisis at the UN General Assembly earlier in the week. Son Jung-in, Arirang News.
Back here in Korea, the government has started emissions testing on Volkswagen cars suspected of running emissions cheating software. Up to 120,000 cars are set to be affected in Korea. Kwon Jang-ho has the details.
The Ministry of Environment has started its investigation into whether Volkswagen diesel cars in Korea are also rigged with the emissions-dodging software that has shaken the global auto industry. Testing officially began on Thursday at the National Institute of Environmental Research. 7 models under the microscope, including the Volkswagen Golf, Jetta, Beetle, and the Audi A3. The government said for the first 2 days, tests will be performed in a controlled lab environment, the same pre-scandal process that has been applied to pass emissions tests. In this phase, inspectors analyse the cars while they're running on a treadmill and measure the corresponding emissions levels. Starting next week, the cars will be tested on the streets of Incheon, where they'll be put through a number of driving conditions, such as going up and downhill, running with the air conditioner on and off, and moving at different speeds. Both tests are essential, as the cheat software can cut emissions output in lab conditions by almost 40 times. The ministry said it expects to release the results in mid-November. If the tested vehicles are found to have illegal software, the government will have the right to stop sales of the cars, order recalls, revoke their emissions classification, and impose fines. The ministry also said that once the investigation is over, authorities will begin inspecting diesel vehicles of other automakers, including domestic car manufacturers. But some industry experts say that more needs to be done to prevent such fraudulent practices.
We need to create an intermediary body to objectively check emissions test results. There needs to be this kind of process, which hasn't existed yet. We need to take this opportunity to create a system that people can trust.
Kwon Jang-ho, Arirang News.
Given that a Korean lawmaker is attempting to rewrite the country's vehicle tax, which is currently based on carbon emissions levels, ruling Saenuri Party lawmaker Kim Jae-chul said Thursday that he will submit his proposed revisions to the local tax law early this month. He said the current law creates a regressive phenomenon in which expensive cars with high fuel efficiency are subject to fewer taxes than cheaper, lower-performing models. Under Kim's new plan, vehicle tax rates would be determined by the purchase price. Korea's industrial output has risen for 3 months in a row as the country steadily recovers from the after effects of the recent MERS outbreak. Statistics Korea says the country's output rose 0.5% on month in August. On-year growth was higher at 1.3%. By sector, the biggest growth was seen in the production of telecommunication devices and semiconductors. This has been attributed to the release of new handsets and government policies to boost consumer spending. Production in the mining and manufacturing industries rose 0.4% in August from a month ago. Production in the service sector gained by the same margin. With the continuing uncertainties in the global economy, however, many emerging countries are facing a greater risk of going bankrupt. Korea is no exception, with its credit default risk at a 2-year high, and the country's dropping trade figures are not making the situation any better. Kwon So-ah reports.
Korea's 5-year credit default swap premium on its sovereign debt hit 82.43 basis points at the end of last month, according to market research from Market, the highest since September 2013. A CDS premium is often used to indicate the creditworthiness of a company or country. Korea's top conglomerate Samsung Electronics CDS premium jumped to a 2-year 3-month high, and other big-name companies saw their largest risk rates in 1 to 2 years. The risk premium rates of Korea and other emerging markets have been going up since China's stock market plunged in July. On top of that, they're facing growing uncertainties stemming from the U.S. rate hike decision. The average risk increase rate for this year was at nearly 62% for Brazil, followed by Malaysia at 56% and Korea at almost 52%.
With the US leaning towards an interest rate hike and China's slow growth expected to continue, there's a chance that the credit default risk will get even higher. But Korea is better off than other emerging economies, as it boasts a sizable current account surplus.
Despite being in the black, Korea's current account surplus is the result of imports being even worse than exports, the country's main growth engine. Korea's trade ministry said Thursday outbound shipments in September fell by 8.3% from the same month last year, imports by almost 22%. The consolation is that export figures improved significantly from August, as shipments to Europe jumped by almost 20% due to gradually improving economic conditions in the region. The prospects for next month are also looking better, with higher demand from North America expected due to Black Friday sales that signal the start of the holiday shopping season. Kwon So-ah, Arirang News.
The curtain has gone up on Asia's biggest film festival. The Busan International Film Festival got underway just minutes ago at 6 p.m. Korea time. Korean wave stars like Lee Jung-jae and Ha Ji-won will share space on the red carpet with major stars from abroad, including China's Tang Wei, France's Sophie Marceau, and Britain's Tilda Swinton. The festival, which is celebrating its 20th anniversary this year, opens with Zuban, the directorial debut of Indian producer Moses Singh, and closes with Mountain Cry by China's Larry Yang. Just over 300 films from 75 countries will be screened during the 10-day event, which runs through October 10th. And that brings us to the end of our newscast. More updates coming up at 10 p.m. Korea time, so stay tuned and goodbye for now.